If we get any more details on this Hamas attack and whether this commander was indeed killed, we'll keep you posted. In the meantime, the NATO leaders wrapping up their 75th anniversary event in Washington, D.C. They had a chance to see up close the President of the United States, an issue I raised with at least 3 of those leaders on this show. Take a look.
The younger you are, the more strength you have, but on the other hand, you do not have such vast life experience. So it is not such a simple answer.
Whether American people will be judging also the NATO summit from the internal political point of view, I would leave that debate for Americans.
What we see these days in NATO is a great leadership of our part of the world, but it's up to you, Americans, who you want as a president after the next election.
All right, well, we didn't exactly expect them to say we're panicked here, but this Politico headline says you're worried if he knows which direction he is going. Nervous world leaders are greeting Biden at NATO. That was from Thursday. Again, that's from a leader not speaking on the record or giving his or her name. And that was kind of the way it went. Julia Manchester, the Hill National Politics reporter, they are concerned, Julia. That's pretty clear. What do you think?
No, absolutely. So these leaders came into this press conference, or this summit, to celebrate really the 75th anniversary of NATO and really come together at a very critical time in foreign policy around the world, as you have Russia's war in Ukraine and you have the Israel-Hamas war. But overshadowing this was these questions about President Biden's health and fitness for office as he's facing a very consequential election this year. On top of that, these leaders are also watching former President Trump, because if former President Trump is elected in November, these leaders could be looking at a very different NATO and a very different relationship with the United States. So, I think a lot of these leaders, a lot of these foreign governments very much nervously watching this election when it comes to Biden and Trump.
What do you make of that argument? They seem to feel that Donald Trump isn't going to be as supportive of NATO. Of course, the former president said otherwise. He has other ideas when it comes to Ukraine. I guess some of them don't like those ideas, especially his resolve to end the war in a matter of days. I believe in one speech he said the first day he takes over. So they wonder what that would involve. What do you think?
Yeah, I think when a lot of these leaders, when a lot of Europeans hear the word America or the phrase America first, I think they're concerned that it means America, alone, America isolating itself from the world stage. They're afraid it means that America doesn't contribute as much to Ukraine. And if you're a European country in very close proximity or closer proximity to Russia, that probably worries you. So I think that's what they're afraid of. Now, President Trump's supporters would say that America first doesn't necessarily mean America alone. It just means that we're putting America first in terms of our priorities and taking care of issues here at home. But his critics very much saying that term America first is really alienating when it comes to our allies, particularly in Europe.
If I could switch gears with you, Julia, and talk a little bit about what the devil's President Joe Biden, whatever those leaders might think of him, more than a few mentioned that he has lost his fastball, and they're concerned about that. But I am wondering where you see this going. The president is going to be reaching out to some of these separate Democratic groups, this new Democratic coalition that has, I believe, north of 100 members, to convince him he's fine, even though a good many of them aren't so sure. Where do you see this going?
Neil, I hate to use this cliche, but this is really unprecedented, and it's hard to make a prediction here. But right now, in this moment, as you hear rumblings of former Speaker Nancy Pelosi meeting with Barack Obama, who was president while Joe Biden was vice president, about potentially, another path forward without Joe Biden, when you have major donors like George Clooney pulling the plug on the Biden campaign, and more House Democrats are coming out against Biden, saying that he should step down from the ticket. It's really hard for me to see how you put the toothpaste back in the tube when it comes to, this very negative news cycle with Joe Biden. Now, his campaign, the president himself, very steadfast. They're saying there is polling that suggests he has a chance, pointing to Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, those blue wall states. But one other thing I think we should keep an eye out on is as we're approaching the Republican National Convention and we get into RNC week, we're going to see President Trump really take a front row seat to the news cycle. He's going to announce his vice presidential pick, and that's going to get a lot of coverage. So I'm curious to see if the Biden team, if Biden allies hope that maybe that provides them with some cover to regroup as they've been having this really disastrous news cycle.
Yeah, I was mentioning that earlier with a couple of Republicans. Do they kind of worry about that, in which their own convention were put off a couple of weeks? So this infighting could still be the front page news for Democrats. Julia, great seeing you again. Thank you so much.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.